Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to TinyBlueGames. My name, of course, is Cesar Chris, and I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I know mine was quite busy at the start of December, but gradually got a bit less busy, and I was able to take some time off at the end of December to relax, which, let's face it, is mostly sitting on a couch watching Netflix, which is quite enjoyable. But eventually I did have the inspiration to start making some more videos, and this is one of those videos that I guess I've been trying to get out for a while. So let's talk about what Wildstar looks like in 2018. Now, I started playing Wildstar again back at the start of 2017, actually, so it's been about a year of playing it quite casually. I've done a lot of leveling, some dungeons, a lot of expeditions and stuff like that, so a lot of solo play, but a bit of group content as well. And I just really wanted to make this video to sort of share what the game's like for those people in the outside world, in the general gaming community who don't really know and haven't put in the time to go and check it out, because there's a lot of people who think the game is completely dead and has been completely dead for the last 3 years. And I'm not here to lie to anyone. The game is not doing great. It's got a low population, but I would say that that low population has been quite stable throughout 2017, and throughout 17 I think the population has remained very consistent, if not grown a small amount over that time. Obviously I don't run the game and don't know the exact numbers, but as someone who played at the start of 2017 and played at the end of 2017, I'd say that just from what I feel and what I see, it looks pretty consistent over that time, if not a little bit more new players. I definitely get a bit more information as I do a few Wildstar videos, and I have a lot of new people coming in through my channel who do, ask me about new player advice and stuff like that. So I have a bit of extra information on how many new players I see coming to the game. Which has always been kind of consistent throughout the year. There's been a few people each month, so it's been cool to see that and see that the community has grown a little bit. But that's pretty much all I want to really say on that. I'm just, flat and simple, want to tell you of my experience in the game so far. So let's talk about it. 2017, I decided to make a new character. I decided to kind of relearn Wildstar, as it had been, a year since I played it. And really wanted to dive into a character that I hadn't experienced before, which was the warrior. Now, I had a lot of fun with this class. I think it's a very traditional big sword, balls to the wall kind of warrior class, and I think they do really well with their classes and having them feel quite different, but still playing with a lot of movement skills that makes Wildstar so great. And realistically, if you haven't tried the combat and movement in Wildstar, I think that itself is worth you stopping by and having a visit. But it's quite enjoyable. The leveling process itself is a bit meh. Like, it's very generic quests. They have updated the intro sort of scenes and quests a bit to make it a bit more exciting. And I think they did quite well in the sense that within 5 minutes you get on a hoverboard, which is one of the most fun parts of the game. So they are really pushing the aspects of the game that they think are doing really well. But with that, they're also kind of forgetting and getting rid of the parts of the game that are dead. And this is something that I kind of had stated in a few other videos that I think they need to do in order to keep the game alive for the people who like it. It's just focus on the parts that are doing well. At this point, I don't think they have the resources to reinvent certain areas of the game, which we'll touch on in just a moment here, and just really focus on the parts that they're doing well, which is, to the greater extent, the PvE gameplay. So let's, get back into the end game. We've gone through leveling and all that. It's quite good, quite traditional. What does level 50 look like? Well, throughout 2017, there's actually been quite a few events where you could get a free level 50, and because of that, a lot of the population nowadays is at max level, and I think that's fairly similar for a lot of games. Obviously, in games where you have a greater overall population, you might have more people that you run into while leveling, but the greater portion of the population is usually at max level in MMOs that focus on that. So Wildstar is no different in that sense. there is a ton of things to do at max level, and it can actually almost be overwhelming, which is kind of weird to hear, despite the fact that they have made some adjustments to how you go about attuning your character and stuff like that, and some of the requirements you need have been toned down a bit, because that was an aspect of the game that people had a lot of issues with. The big thing for me, actually, the weirdest thing, is that they renamed ship hands to expeditions. I actually don't know. I think that happened before I rejoined, and it's caused me the biggest amount of chaos in terms of remembering to call it expeditions now. But expeditions have become quite a big piece of the game for multiple reasons. The first of which is that there's scalable content in terms of player and difficulty. So you can play between, or you can do solo, or you can find a group of 3. Obviously, the solo is an interesting aspect for both leveling and progression once you get to your first level 50 up there, as you can join in at any time, right? Like, with any game, there's hot times to play the game and sort of lulls. Like, I mean, if you're trying to find a group at 3 a.m., it's going to be pretty difficult. So why not hop into a solo expedition? And it's a fun time. It offers a lot of adventure and stuff like that. And they've actually added a new one this year too, if not more. I think for sure one new one, maybe 2, that have been pretty interesting to the game. I think just one maybe, but it's been pretty fun. They're all very traditional in terms of the sense that they are expeditions to sort of a spaceship or a space base of some sort, where you explore a mystery of some sort. They have a very creepy sort of old-timey feel and an old-timey trailer, which I think really adds to them a lot. And they've always been one of my favorite parts of the game, so they're quite active still. From that, you used to have adventures. Now, adventures have been removed from the attunement process, and for the most part are completely dead in the game. And it's kind of sad because a lot of them were kind of fun. I mean, obviously not Malgrave, but for those veterans who know about Malgrave Trail, I mean, yes, there was some fun elements, but man, was it a long time grinding some golds on Malgrave. That was, whew. I'm happy to see that one go, but a lot of the adventures aren't played pretty much at all unless you're specifically trying to play an adventure, which I don't see many people doing. So if you're there for the adventures, you might not be in luck. The opinion that I've had on the adventures for a while now is that they should be converted into ship hands, as both adventures and ship hands kind of feel like not ship hands, I just talked about this, expeditions, that they kind of are trying to accomplish the same goal, and having them beside each other, it was pretty obvious that one of them was going to win out, and it's probably the one that offers a solo queue as well as a group queue. So with that, I think they should just be converted into expeditions, and we should get rid of adventures, but keep a lot of the theme of the adventures in the ship hands, and even make more adventure style things that are ran by the caretaker and stuff like that, but as ship hand style content. But, you know, we can debate whether or not that's a good move to the end of time. A lot of people don't like the idea of cutting out content, and I get that, but this is more of a repurpose than a cutting out. But let's talk about dungeons. Dungeons are one of the most played parts of the game, so if you're there for the dungeons, and let's be honest, Wildstar dungeons are kick-ass, they're pretty fun. So I don't know, leveling with dungeons is quite different. Well, it's not different, it's quite good actually. I was surprised by how many people do dungeons while leveling, but you should also be aware that you will not be using the group finder to find dungeon queues while leveling. What you should do is, in the Nexus chat, actually, you'll see a lot of people that are saying, you know, looking for more random dungeons. And those are very open groups, usually, where if you're above the level for the first dungeon, which I think is either 10 or 15, you can hop right into that group. They'll worry about finding, you know, what the tank or healer is once you've joined in. And you guys will probably run several dungeons back to back to back. The big things that are good for this is that you do get a lot of XP, and they are generally ran really fast. So it's a really fun way to level if you don't like traditional questing. The kind of downside of it is that because it pools together a lot of different leveled people, if you have some higher levels in the group, you kind of like just stomp the dungeon and you don't really care about mechanics all that much, which is bad in terms of training new players about the dungeon, but also bad in terms of fun. But it is good in terms of getting as much XP as you can quickly. So there's that. The other thing to pay attention to is that if you have a low level person, like someone who's level 10, you're not going to be able to get any of the higher level dungeons as a queue, right? You're going to random queue, but this requirement of level will make it so that you always get the Proto Games Academy or something like that, which can get a bit tedious. So it's sometimes less fun if you have a level 10, unless you love the Proto Games Academy. Then you should make sure you always have a low level character in your group, I guess. At high level, they're quite fun too. It's kind of the step you move from after doing expeditions. And this is, I guess, where I want to talk about the most amount of progression that's been added to the game in 2017, which is the prime levels. All content, well, not all content, that's a pretty blanketed statement, but both expeditions, dungeons, and now some raids have prime levels, which means you can scale the difficulty of the encounters. From what I understand, it just scales the actual stat values of the encounters. Like, it doesn't actually add different mechanics or not. But I also haven't done enough raids with it to really know if that's true. But I'm pretty sure it's more of a stat-based scaling system, which is fine. But what this does is it really allows Carbine Studios to extend the life of old content, and just by adding more layers of difficulty to it. And you know, there's a bit of mixed thoughts on this. Obviously, this is kind of a signal that they're going to be using a lot of the same assets they have to make new content in the future, but it does allow the game, even with the lower population, to still add reasons to play the game and progression to the people who have top gear and stuff like that. So it's pretty fun that way. I think it's a really cool system too. I actually like it. It's very similar to Fractals of the Mist kind of in Guild Wars 2, except for in Fractals we haven't really ever seen them push past Fractal 100 yet, which has always been something that I'm curious as to whether they're going to do or not. Whereas these prime levels, I strongly get the feeling that eventually they're going to keep on pushing them up each time. I mean, I obviously don't know the future, but if I was in control of that and there was still people wanting to push further, I'd keep on allowing them to push to these greater difficulties and see how high it can go, right? I don't know, it's a cool system. And it allows for character progression with the way you spend your different primal matrices and stuff like that. They've actually even added different skills and stuff through that system. So they've added increased character growth as well as different leveled content in 2017. So it was a pretty big drop, really, that I don't feel people appreciate the value. I mean, obviously the people who are playing Wildstar appreciate it, but from the outside, you know, it's kind of a complicated system to really wrap your head around. And I think you need, even me, who's hit 50 for about a month now, it's still, you know, you learn different things because there's like different essences that you get from different events that change depending on the day, and you need to spend it in a certain order and stuff like that. It's a very particular system, and you need to learn it. And one day I hope to do a tutorial on how to use it, but I'm just not skilled enough, and there are good tutorials online already on how to use it, so I feel like they accomplished that way better than me. But all that to say, that was a huge add in 2017, and I think it's a system that will hopefully be built upon a lot more in 2018 and gives the devs a lot of room to work with. So the last really good thing to talk about for 2017 is the Big Daddy raids. Obviously, Wildstar offers some pretty good raids. A lot of people who like still hate the game were like, hey, the content's actually really good, but there's this, that, and the other that I don't like. So the raid content is quite enjoyable in this game. Currently, we have, I guess, 4 raids in the game, which scale pretty drastically in difficulty. The easiest being Genetic Archives. Let's see if I can name them all. There's Datascape, augmented something something, which is the sort of one boss in a box one, which is pretty cool, and then the Red Moon raid, which is the newest one. And it was released in 2 parts. I don't know if both parts were released in 2017 or not, but it's the newest one to come to the game. And it's the one that a lot of people probably haven't even like heard of or played who used to raid Wildstar, because it was kind of added after a lot of raiding groups left the game. So it would be interesting for a lot of them to come back and try out the content and see how they like it. I've seen a lot of the fights. It is pretty cool. I mean, any Wildstar fight is quite cool. They have so much movement and different mechanics to play with that I think it's just a great time no matter what you're doing. And then with a lot of the earlier raids like Genetic Archives, they've started adding prime levels, so you can start getting, you know, better rewards and more challenge from that initial content as well. So I think it's made the system quite good. And for someone who's freshly hit 50 and looking at all that raid, like all the raids you have to do and raid bosses you have to do, like that's a ton of content. It is just a tremendous amount of content to get over. And I think that's fun. It's overwhelming, but it's fun. So let's talk about kind of the more neutral aspect of the game. We have the PvP, which in my opinion is the battlegrounds and arena. We'll touch on war plots in a second, but PvP in terms of battlegrounds and arena is kind of alive. There's very, very specific times that you queue for them. And it's like people actually in chat saying, hey, we're all going to queue for PvP now. Let's, you know, go fight against each other. And there'll be like 1 match that gets played or something like that, or 2 matches or something like that, which is kind of sad. I find that with Wildstar PvP, you either love it or hate it, depending on your thoughts of the telegraph system in PvP. I definitely liked some aspects of it, but I also found that like overlapping telegraphs sometimes got very confusing for me. So there was a bit of a love-hate for me already. But it does get done. I think there's more specific groups or guilds that you can join that focus on that a lot more too at endgame. And that's actually something I should have touched on for raids and stuff like that. It's once you get to endgame, if you find yourself a good raiding group, it's not actually hard to get into raids if you get into a good guild. And even to today, like a few days before 2018, I still see people pugging raids in the chat. So that's something that still happens in this game in 2018. So, and for me, that's always been such a good marker, is if a game is alive enough to have people pugging raids, it's you know, alive enough to play. But let's talk about the dead parts of the game now, because there are some dead parts. I think particularly we talked about one already, which was adventures. They are dead. They are like, you could get a group together to just specifically do one, but I wouldn't even really know the purpose of doing it, except for like just for the lols or something like that. Like it's a dead piece of content that I think even Carbine themselves have kind of decidedly moved away from. And that's my opinion. Like, this is all my opinion. I'm not a dev. I don't know, but that's what I think. And then the other one is war plots. And this is really a shame, because war plots were, in my mind, one of the bigger selling features of Wildstar back 4 years ago now, where I saw the trailer for war plots and the idea of a 50-50 battleground where you kind of zazz up your buildings and like put traps and stuff in was so cool. And even back when the game was extremely popular, like when it first launched, there wasn't that many war plots that were done, just because of how many resources and the logistics of getting a 40 versus 40 thing going on. It was so difficult. I think I only ever played in 2 war plots myself. They were a lot of fun, but it was so difficult to get them going. And today they're pretty dead. There might be a guild out there, and if there is one that's watching this video, feel free to share yourself in the comments that still somehow runs them, but I don't. Like, if you were coming to Wildstar with your sole goal to play war plots, I don't know, I would strongly discourage you, or I would go to the Reddit community and sort of like look up if this actually still happens or not before you get in, because it just seems like such a, I never see people talking about it. So I think those are the 2 pieces of content that I really want to talk about kind of disappearing. There's still a fair bit of open world content that does happen, specifically in terms of world bosses. There's a lot of that goes around, and you see people doing trains to go kill them. So there's a lot of fun that way, and I think a lot of the fun does start at level 50. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to share in Wildstar. I know this video has gotten a little bit longer than I wanted, and I've gotten way off script, which isn't surprising considering I usually don't write scripts. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gives you a good look at what I think Wildstar is in 2018. And if I had to guess what they're going to do, I think it's going to be very, very continuous from 2017. I think they're going to continue to expand on the Primal Matrix system. I think they're obviously going to continue adding stuff to the cash shop and to housing through the cash shop. I didn't talk about housing is something great that you can still do too, because that doesn't take more players or anything like that. Like that's still a very vibrant part of the game. That's a bonus. There, you get one bonus super good part of the game is housing. How do you forget about housing in Wildstar? It's the best. So they'll add stuff like that to the game, which is quite good. They'll continue doing festivals, which are always really fun. And I think they'll just try and keep this sort of steady population with a little bit of growth. I'd like to see them try some different tactics to get new players. I don't know if the free level 50 boost is the only one that they're able to do. I think there would be some more interesting initiatives that they could do to try and grow, but we'll see if that happens or not. For now, I think the game is fairly stable, and if you are interested in it, I strongly suspect that you will have a lot of fun playing it. And just I think that's the biggest thing that anyone who's looking for a new MMO can take away, is that don't think of where the game's going to go. Just enjoy playing it whenever you log on, right? Like, it doesn't always have to be about, you know, what's going to come next year or anything like that. Sometimes it can really just be, hey, I'm going to go play on my warrior and kill some people with these badass skills because it's a fun game and it's fun to do that. I don't know. That's how I've been playing games for the last couple years now, very casually. And I think it's really driven my enjoyment of MMOs and other genres up a lot more. And that's discussion for another video as well. But hopefully you guys enjoy yourselves in the game. Or if you're going to continue to say that it's a dead game, I will respect your opinion too. So there you go. All right, guys, hopefully you have a great start to 2018. I'm happy to have finally made a video and get off my lazy butt. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video, guys. Have a great rest of your day.